I spent nearly 20 some years in the throes of Wall Street. Like you think of Wall Street, that's where I was, investment banking. By all traditional and conventional measures of success, I had it, I made it, or so to speak, position and roles and titles and recognition and money. And it's interesting. I was deeply unhappy. I was feeling unhappy with what I did. It reflected in other ways in my personal life, but I was just in denial. I identified with what I did. What I did was who I was, but I hated what I did. And so I hated myself. So that was a whole different ballgame. We are carrying this amazing mystery in us. And so it's just there for us to unravel it, for us to just be still enough for it to expose itself.
Hello, beautiful questers, and a warm welcome to the OneQuest podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us on this journey of learning and self-discovery.
Our guests are not just mentors in wellness and self-improvement, they are adventurers at heart, sharing their unique paths and life lessons.
If you enjoy our show, please subscribe and share. Your support enables us to feature more amazing guests and deliver impactful conversations. Please note that some episodes may cover sensitive topics like abuse, mental health struggles, and personal challenges.
So we'll jump into it. I've got a little introduction about Sue, and then it'll be wonderful to hear about her journey and where she's come from and what she's doing now. Sue Iyer transitioned from a 25-year corporate career in finance and technology to a path of purpose in yoga, meditation, and myofascial release. Though raised with yoga philosophy in her South Indian home, she initially resisted it until a stressful day at work led her to a class that changed everything. Now, with over 3,000 teaching hours and extensive training, she leads workshops, retreats, and teacher trainings worldwide. Combining her corporate experience and wellness, she helps individuals and organisers foster balance, resilience, and transformation. An avid tennis and pickleball player, I can't wait to hear about this one, high altitude hiker and lover of laughter, Sue lives by the belief that change starts within, and she's never felt more aligned with her purpose. Thank you so much, Sue.
Oh, thank you.
So, yes, let's dive right into it. Corporate career, and then moving over to this is chalk and cheese stuff.
Well, quite the 180-degree shift, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And high-end corporate life, you've shared a little bit with me before. What was that? What did that look like for you, that high-end corporate life?
Yeah, so I actually spent many years in Wall Street. I have a background in technology and finance. And so I spent nearly 20 some years in the throes of Wall Street. Like you think of Wall Street, that's where I was, investment banking, global banking solutions, and so on and so forth. And with all the A-type personalities, intense, work hard, play hard lifestyle. So interesting, right? Because by all traditional and conventional measures of success, I had it, I made it, or so to speak, position and power and roles and titles and recognition and money and what have you. But it's interesting. I was deeply unhappy. What I did, I was good at what I did, but it just did not, make me feel fulfilled or personally, rewarded in any way. So there was something deeply lacking, and the more I did it, the lack just grew. And so I realized that it was a time to step back and make a change.
And I imagine in that environment, it's high pressure, you are being pushed to perform. Is burnout quite a common thing in that world, in that space?
Yes, very much so, because early on, when you're younger, you sort of really embrace it. You're up for that challenge. It drives you, that energy. You work long hours, but then you have, you also have these great parties and, all of that. You really you feel like you're making a difference to the organization you're working for, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of energy involved. And so what goes up must come down, right? So when you do that, and as you get older, you start to take a step back, and then you say, okay, what am I really doing? What's the point of this? And so I actually, for the last few years, I had cut down my time such that I would only work 9 months a year. And I would take 3 months off because I was working on such mission critical projects. So there was a lot of remediation work that had government oversight that also needed to be performed. So it was interesting. I would never trade it for anything because I feel like that journey has molded me in some place to where I am today. So, and I needed to go through it, and it was great while it lasted. It's just that there was a time when I felt like this wasn't me.
Yeah, absolutely. And
was there a pivot point? No, I was just going to say, was there a pivot point? Like was there that point where everything just shifted, or that you just went, wait a second, and kind of had that, I guess just the awareness that a course adjustment needed to be done, because it's one thing to just be going and feeling that deep unhappiness and having that sort of stir within you. But I'm always fascinated in like, what was that pivot point, that moment where everything shifted and you got that new perspective and it was like, wait a second, I need to go on a different path.
I love that question because I think for some of us, there's that tipping point, where you come to a spot and then you just like let it go and then you've gone to the next thing. For me, it was more a process.
Okay.
So initially I was just in denial. I was feeling unhappy with what I did. It reflected in other ways in my personal life, but I was just in denial. I mean, who could, and it was kind of reinforced by society and my peer network that would constantly tell me how I had made it and how successful I was and how most people would give their right arm to be where I am and so on and so forth, right? And meanwhile, I had this little hole that kept growing. So it was a process, to answer your question, and it took time. But it did come to a point where I decided. So what I also started to do, I have a master's in environmental science, by the way.
Okay.
I went to an Ivy League. My capstone was actually published. This was before climate change became such a big thing, before ESG and sustainability became such a big thing. But so what I tried to do was, along with my corporate career, one realization that I had, Catherine, was that I wanted to do something more impactful, more either socially or environmentally, just do something that would make the world a better place. And I felt like that wasn't happening in the corporate world for me. So what I decided to do, but everything else was good, right? I mean, I loved going to work in the heart of New York and, making all this money and having the parties and so on and so forth. So I didn't want to give that up either. So I said, oh, let's bridge the two worlds. And, while I continue to sell my soul, let me try to earn it back.
That's fantastic.
So
credits.
So I try to play both sides, meaning that I had one foot in my day job, which I felt like was affording me a good quality of lifestyle. And the other was where I was teaching in community colleges, and I was trying to do small projects that were environmentally responsible and, freelancing on this side. So I tried to do that, and it worked and it didn't work, meaning that it was a smaller portion of my life than my corporate job. So it gave me a little bit of satisfaction, but I very quickly realized that the corporate life was not sustainable. I needed to get away from it. So I decided that I'm operating too long with a safety net. So I'm one of those acrobats that wants to jump and I'm almost there, but I'm always looking for that safety net. And I realized I was never going to jump until the safety net was gone. And so I quit cold turkey.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So I just walked away.
Were you, because you've identified that for yourself, at what point, or at any point, were you just looking around in this corporate world, looking at all these people that are probably feeling very similar? Could you identify that being a problem for others, especially in a high intensity corporate world? Surely there's a lot of people that need an adjustment on lifestyle. Was it easy to see?
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, there were people who loved it. Let me not take anything away from them, and all power. I loved it for a long time. And I really felt like what I did was amazing and was great. I totally drank the Kool-Aid and I fell for all that, there's nothing wrong with it. It gave you reason to be at that time. I'm not judging anybody. But there are people who struggle with the fact that they cannot leave the job because perhaps the money is good and they have dependents. And, there's a whole life that gets in the way, right? There's practical issues that you have to worry about. At the same time, there are plenty of people who don't know what it is they would do if it weren't for their jobs. So I know a couple of people who actually retired and then had all this kind of, almost personality issues and I know it so well because you tie your identity with what you do. And so the moment you stop doing it, then you no longer know who you are. And so it became a full-blown identity crisis. My crisis was a little bit different because I identified with what I did. What I did was who I was, but I hated what I did. And so I hated myself. So that was a whole different ballgame. But there are so many people in corporate who struggle with trying to find an alternative or, let go of something to reach something else, also because it's become such a comfort thing as well, right? So yeah, the challenges are many and multidimensional.
So what happened in that yoga class then to cause the shift? Because it sounds like that was kind of a catalyst to get you more into soul work compared to what you'd done in the past, where, like you said, you were fulfilling roles and responsibilities, but it's like your soul wasn't being quenched. It sounds like that yoga class, that's a different Kool-Aid, isn't it? Right?
Yes, for sure it is. And what's interesting is I was raised in the yogic tradition. I'm from South India and I come from a Vedic family, and my mother would make me do yoga before breakfast every morning. And I wouldn't do it. Like, I would rebel and I'd be like, oh, this is not cool. I want to be in a rock band. I want to be playing the guitar, to Pearl Jam. Who wants to be doing yoga? Come on, it's not cool. And then she would make me, the threat of breakfast, I had to do it because otherwise I wouldn't get breakfast. So the threat of breakfast worked. But I would tell her, please don't tell anybody that I'm doing yoga. How embarrassing. This is not cool stuff. So
I love that.
Yeah. So when I came to New York, of course, I didn't do yoga. I'd actually forgotten all about it. And then after a stressful day at work one day, I happened to just walk by and I saw this yoga studio and I just dropped in. I even had to buy like tights and yoga pants from there because I wasn't carrying anything. But when I left, the difference, and I remember this so well to this day, it was a summer afternoon. I left the studio, and as I walked home, I was thinking, oh my God, now I feel like I can be myself at home. Otherwise, what I was doing was I was bringing my work persona home, and I was so all at sea at home because it's a completely different environment. And here I am still being this person who worked in a global bank and who was running big projects, but it wasn't working. But that day when I got home, I felt more like myself. And I said, this is what I need to do is I need to find this interlude between work life and home life. And I sort of reconnect to myself. So in some ways, I looked at it as closing the parenthesis on my day at work and then opening the parenthesis for my life at home. But then this yoga thing just got a hold of me. Gave me this big hug such that soon the parenthesis flipped. And so it became about yoga. And then the work life dropped off. So more practically and less dramatically speaking, I moved from New York to California. I decided to throw in the towel on corporate and said, I'm just going to make yoga my thing. And I did my teacher training certification, and which opened the doorway to so much incredible learning. I'm so grateful. But let me tell you, nobody is more shocked and surprised than my mother. When I called her and I'm like, Ma, I'm training to be a yoga teacher, she wouldn't even believe me.
That's great. And how long ago was this transition? Just for context for our listeners.
7, 8 years ago.
8 years ago. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
You are very fortunate, I think, to be able to change career, go back into the student role, start learning again, pick up a new skill, and then take that skill and move forward in a new career, I guess. Like, it's quite, I think even the ego that comes with it of, I've been in this big corporate job, I'm moving into a new role that may not be paying the same, but I have to adjust everything. Like, it would have been a huge shift for you, I'm sure. What was that like?
Oh, it was big. It was big. You're moving from a position of, a relative status, relative, titles and positions and powers and whatnot. And then you look at someone half your age doing things that you couldn't even dream of doing. It was a huge wake-up call. And I have to say, I really recognized and understood my ego to be what it was. I really had an ego. I mean, I would never have thought of myself as that person, but I guess it was a huge learning experience for me, and I had to check the ego in at the door. And in some ways, I feel like that has spiraled my growth almost in this, which I can speak to a lot of, because it's not easy. I made the transition in the second half of my 4th decade, so well after 45, and it's not easy. It's not easy to start from scratch and not knowing where you're going, and then have to check the ego at the door and say, okay, there's somebody here who knows a lot more than I do, regardless of how old they are, or what they can teach me. And I've carried that lesson to this day. I do believe that everyone can teach me something, and it's just up to me to listen and learn.
Amazing. That would have been a big energetic shift for you too, because, being in corporate and in such high profile positions, it's really kind of a neck up energy. It's all very mental. It's all kind of, based on the intellect, and to then turn around and move into very heart centered, body centric kind of business model. That's a total flip to go back to really being in your body again, because I'm guessing that wasn't something that you would have done a lot in corporate life. It's more just the go, 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 and sort of dragging your body along behind you for the ride. That's a massive flip to then go into such a business and a way of being that's really about, a body and spirit first, and actually releasing the mind more. Tell us a little bit about what that shift was like, because I'm fascinated to see how that landed with you.
Absolutely. And I think I think you're being kind. In fact, I would say I neglected my body. I've always been a fitness and a sports enthusiast, and I've always, worked out. I love going to the gym. I love athletic endeavors. I watch all sports, and I will play all sports if you let me. So despite that, I neglected my body. It was very much all an intellectual pursuit in terms of, there was very little other than going to the gym and taking care of your body for that 1 hour or so. It was all neglect. And what I mean by that is, now that I'm trained in this modality, I know that we store our emotions in our tissues, in our body. And, it just accumulates. And the more disconnected you get between mind and body, the more it accumulates and the less release you give it. And that was a huge transition for me, is once I started practicing yoga regularly, meditation, my fascial release, I practice what I preach, and I do it on myself too. So I realized that the stuff that was surfacing was all this pent-up tension I had, that I had accumulated over the years, not just from work, but also, stuff at home and just my personality and all of that. And so I have now, and to your point, it's a transition. It's a process. It takes time, and you can try to rush it, but the body cannot be rushed. It's going to, it's going to let these things go at its own time. All you can do is give it space and listen and be kind to it, which that's a whole different switch that I had to make, which was when all the stuff came out, I was just impatient. I was like, oh, come on, what is this? Let's move on, grow a pair. Let's get going here. What are you doing, No, but to learn to be compassionate, to learn to hold space for yourself, to learn to listen to the body and that connection between body and mind, and how that works is just something fascinating. And I'm continually learning, to be honest.
And I want to listen to more of your journey as we progress down this path. It's fantastic. But something just came up for me because of your introduction. You're a tennis player, pickleball player. First question, I need to understand what pickleball is. High altitude hiker. So I'm just wondering as well, the second question is, at childhood, were you into your sport, a high performer, or did this come as a result of your career, being in the corporate world, high performance? Then you also sort out, like, you've got an expectation to be a performer in all areas. Do you push yourself in all ways? And that's now in your yoga career, you've also kind of carried that through, and you're like, I want to do, I want to perform at this level. I want to achieve certain things. Is that something that's been consistent through all of your life?
Gosh, I love that question. It's like you've been reading my mind and what's happening in my life for the last few years. But no, so I didn't grow up playing too many sports. My family doesn't come from, we come from very modest means. And so the only real thing that was a focus was academics. You study hard, so you get a good job, you train yourself in a skill. So I have an engineering background. So, it's what puts bread on the table, and makes you self-sufficient. So that's what you focused on. But I watched a lot of sports, at least a few things that were available in India back in the 80s. But I watched a lot of sports. I started playing tennis when I came to New York, actually. So I started playing tennis as an adult, but it was surprising that I was not terrible at it. I mean, I'm not anywhere near pro level or anything. I'm like an intermediate advanced kind of amateur, but still it opened up the world, to a whole group of people, to friends, to communities, and so on and so forth. Pickleball, yeah, I'm surprised you guys. So is it paddle? Is paddle a big deal in Australia? Paddle?
Not sure. Explain it to me. It may be.
So pickleball is all the rage now in the US, where there are more pickleball players than even tennis players, apparently. So it's a much smaller court, and you play with this plastic ball, and you get like a flat paddle, and then you just hit the ball around. It's quicker points. It's a combination of badminton and table tennis and tennis. All put together. It moves quickly, and more people are adopting. Now, anyone who's listening to this podcast who's a tennis player, forgive me, because I have turned to the dark side, because there's a whole war between tennis and pickleball players. So perhaps I should not have mentioned that in my bio, but it's my new little passion. Pickleball. So that's what pickleball is.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and for some people who cannot picture this, it's like when you go on holidays or to the beach, some people play it on the beach, like with a smaller paddle. That's what immediately came to mind, but I absolutely know the sport now that I just quickly looked it up. Yes, it's
funny. I played with someone who has played tennis before recently, and she was like, so I'm just in the beginner, right, with this little plastic ball. When are we transitioning to the real ball? I'm like, that's the real ball. So yes, nice. But it's a lot of fun. It's quick points, especially if you play doubles. Anyway, yes. So I was, I enjoy it because you get to meet a lot of people. It's less snooty and less formal than tennis can be. So it attracts more people. Anyway.
And
your question was about performance. Yeah. Yes. So one of the things I wasn't aware I was doing, but I was doing in the corporate world was you have to perform. And I feel like many people can identify with this because you have to be someone because that's what the game calls for, right? You can't just be yourself. And to a certain extent, that's good. You don't want to be bad mouthing people to their face. And, there's a certain decorum behind it. But at the same time, more fundamentally, you have to play a role. You're performing. And I didn't realize how far that had become enmeshed in me, that I found myself also performing out of the workspace. On tennis, yes, you have to, like, I was putting a lot of pressure on, oh my God, I got to win this point. How can I possibly not win this point? I'm never getting off this court if I don't win this set, that level of pressure, and that contributes all of that. So it's not just work, it's all of that that contributes to your burnout, because it's just you and you're playing all these roles, and you're trying to really, in the middle of all this, you're trying to find out who you are at the same time, and you get lost in the mix. So it's interesting, because when I did yoga and I graduated from teacher training, I was starting to do the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, now I'm a teacher. How many classes am I going to teach? Oh my gosh, there were only 5 people in my class today, whereas yesterday there were 25 people. Am I failing? I must be failing. That kind of thing. So I started to measure my performance against all these external metrics. And then one day I was in bed. I had a class later that day, and I said, I can't do it. I can't do the class. And I was panicked. I literally had a panic attack, and just introspecting, I realized that I was putting the same pressure on me as I had been in Wall Street, in corporate America. And I'm like, that's not why I'm doing this. Not at all. Not even close. So, in fact, this should be the antidote and the antithesis of what I was doing there. So, and that's when I realized that I was teaching, and it was just very early on in my yoga teaching career, that I'm teaching for the wrong reasons. So I took a break, and I said, I'm going to just practice. I'm just going to stay with my practice. Because at the end of the day, what yoga is a personal journey. And I may be fortunate enough to lead someone else on their journey, but I can't do that if I'm not leading myself on the journey first. And so my practice now informs my teaching, to the extent that if I can't practice, I cannot teach. And I love that, because I can no longer hide from who I am. I have to be myself on the mat too, which is exactly what I was looking for all these years. So it took me that moment where I realized I was performing even on the yoga mat, that to step back and say, so, in yoga, we have this concept called abhyasa, which is practice, and vairagya, which is detachment from the results of that practice. So I made sure that I wasn't practicing, for a class, to teach a class, or to teach a workshop, or to lead a teacher training. That's not why I'm practicing. I'm practicing for the joy of it, for the fact that yoga makes me feel better. It makes me feel like myself. And the moment I made that switch, I am so much more aligned and sort of in my own skin, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And was there something within those practices once you started really stepping into yoga? I know you do a lot of breath work and meditation, and you were talking about the myofascial release. Is there something that in your practice you find is kind of the thing that helps bring you home the quickest, like something that's a really good reset for you, or to help you feel, more Sue, I guess? It's sometimes we find these go-to practices, and you're like, yeah, this is a thing that helps bring me back to me. Have you found that there's something that's kind of like a little inroad for you, or a kind of quick step
actually,
in?
Depending on the situation, I like to say I'm with yoga and these little practices that I have. I like to say I'm carrying a toolbox, so that I can pull out the tool that is appropriate for that occasion. So it depends. If I'm feeling more lethargic and more kind of down in the dumps, a Debbie Downer kind of feeling, then I like to do a more energizing yoga practice. So, I'm moving faster, I'm doing inversions, I'm doing harder things, because I feel like the body is a vehicle that you you could use to get deeper into that mental space. If I had to pick one, if you put a gun to my head and said, pick one thing, it would have to be breath work for me, pranayama. So different types of breath work just to get me out of that mental space and more in touch with the present moment.
So powerful, isn't it, breath work? Like it's
for sure.
I completely agree. For me, it's the fastest way to help me realign and get back into my body, whether it's a stressful situation or, like you said, whether you're lethargic. There are so many kind of little practices that you can then pull in with breath work that helps. It's like it just shifts everything. I feel like I can get a totally new mindset or mindscape just by implementing a different breath. And it's also the fastest way for me to mindfulness and to being present.
Yes.
Yes, I know, fact, mindfulness is something that you do a lot of too.
Yes. In fact, I was teaching a meditation class this morning, and it's for a new studio that I haven't been there, and I haven't taught these classes there before. So I don't know what style they incorporate. And I just took a chance and I said to my students, we're going to start with breath work, because I don't know what their state of mind is coming in. Maybe they've already had like a busy morning sending their kids off to school, or maybe they had a fight with a partner and they're coming, or maybe they're super sleepy and just rolled off bed. I don't know. But in order to, sort of bring us all into the same space, I think focusing on the breath and regulating it a little bit sort of makes the playing field even, and then, allows us to sort of reset and get going on the next task.
Absolutely. And so for your own personal journey, did you find it difficult to go from corporate high performance to learning yoga or getting back onto the mat and learning meditation, to actually learn how to slow yourself down enough to enjoy a meditation? And I only ask this because I'm still on that path of very much learning how to enjoy a meditation and get the most from it. Sometimes I find it really frustrating because I'm like, my mind is quite busy at the moment. Maybe I need to change the time of day that I do my meditation, or as you just said, maybe I need to do some breath work to set myself up for a better meditation. But for yourself, did you find it took time? Just for everyone out there who wants to do meditation and maybe feels similar to me, can you share your experience with getting into meditation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot that's misunderstood about meditation. And actually, it's funny because I'm working on another course that I wanted to put up online at OneQuest that is a meditation series. And I was thinking about it actually in 3 parts, and I'm actually designing it in 3 parts. The first part is actually to address these misconceptions about meditation. What's the difference between meditation and mindfulness, for example? Or what is meditation, a process or an outcome? And I think that's where, and also how to make it a habit. And I think that's the habit formation is where most people, suffer or struggle with, which is that everybody's happy to sit down and do a meditation, but how do you sustain it for the long term, which is how you reap benefits from it. It's not a one-off session, which is better than 0 sessions, but then to really, get benefit from it, you need to practice it over a period of time. But Steph, to answer your question, I think it's helpful to understand. So I like to use analogies for all of this. And I'll give you the analogy I used today in class, which was, you have to think of your mind like a little puppy. The puppy hasn't been trained yet. And what does the puppy naturally do? It's going to run away. It's going to run here and there. It's a puppy. It's what it does. So you can't beat the puppy into submission, right? And it's certainly not going to submit to you. Hopefully nobody's beating puppies into submission, but the puppy is also not going to submit to you on day one, right? It needs to be trained. And that's why you have dog trainers and so on and so forth. So the mind is exactly like that. So 2 things. One is it takes practice, right? And you do it even for 5 minutes a day. If you do it every day, it adds up to more than doing 30 minutes one day and then not doing it at all for the next, 6 days. But also to invite your mind back with the tenderness that you would use for a little puppy. So what ends up happening when we're sitting there and then we suddenly catch ourselves lost in thought, and you're like, oh, darn it, what is the matter with me? Come on back. Time for meditation. I'm meditating now. Like, let's focus. Come on, let's do this. That is not going to work. So you have to invite it back, saying, okay, here comes another thought. That's okay. That's all right. This is what I do. But where's my breath now? Let me look for my breath. So you gently bring it back, just like you would a little puppy. I think that's where that shift happens. And if you do that, then it's easier to sit. And when it becomes easier to sit, then your practice starts to gain traction and starts to, make a difference.
Yeah, love it. It's almost like a little bit of a story to have a bit of a guided meditation. And I think it's great, just the little example you shared there of how you teach your courses for the people listening. You've currently got 6 courses on OneQuest, and it sounds like you've got a couple more maybe up your sleeve. So, definitely jump onto OneQuest and check out your courses. It'd be great to get that meditation course up there. I'll give it a try myself, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the meditation course is going to consist of 3 parts. One, as I said, is just to clarify, and that's just a few minutes in each session. The second is the actual practice, and we'll be doing things like, I'll be throwing in different types of meditation, because you never know what really clicks for you. And I think we all respond differently to different types. So we'll be exploring different types of meditations throughout, visualizations, analogies, Anapanasati, which is the Buddhist Vipassana style breathing meditation. We'll do shamatha meditation. We'll do loving kindness, a lot of practices. And then the habit formation as well is really where I'm going to add on, where there'll be a focus on trying to make this a habit for people. And honestly, knowing from my personal experience, that's the hardest part, is to make this a habit.
But then it gets addictive though, because when you start getting that awareness, it's like you can't unsee it then, can you? Like in your daily life, it's so much easier. You keep picking yourself up and it's like, where is my head right now? Or where is my breath right now? It's once, and it's not that push to have that, that kind of regular practice. You can't not fall into it, because you long for it, long for that more awareness and that kind of heightened sense of, where am I at right now? It's amazing how you can then bring that into daily life. It's such a game changer when you can start, looking at your thoughts and looking at how you react and your triggers, and then everything becomes a playground.
That's right. That's right. You don't take yourself so seriously anymore. You're just calmer. You enjoy life more. It's funny, because I didn't even realize the changes in me. My mother realized it, and she was like, I used to be a storm in the teacup as a child, quick fire and so she was like, I can't believe this is the same person. Like, who are you? Any other day you would have been so angry at this situation, but now look at you taking it in your stride. And honestly, when she said that, I didn't realize it, but she's right. But I also felt great. I felt proud. And I'm glad I'm no longer that person that so quickly reacted to things, So you become happier with yourself. And I think when you find that, so by the way, that's what I call success these days, is when you feel good in your own skin, when you feel like you're aligned with your message, that quiet confidence that comes from knowing that you're going to respond to something and not just blindly react to it. I think that's what I call success nowadays.
Amazing.
That's great.
Have you found though that with this shift, because this is a really big life change that you've had, how have you found the ripple effect of that within your own family unit? I know you said your parents, your mother and even your grandmother, were very sort of much in that yogic tradition. But have you found that now that you're reflecting and sort of mirroring that back to them, has there been a shift sort of within the family dynamic as well?
Yes, for sure. I mean, sometimes I wonder, and I'm ever so grateful for my family for having put up with me when I wasn't this way. It must have been hard. I was not easy. My grandmother is no more, but I do believe that she would have been very, very proud of me. She was my role model. She raised me, so she'd have been very, very proud of me for who I've become. And certainly my mother has expressed that herself. I think when you feel good about yourself, I think other people automatically sense it and they appreciate it. And I know, and I'm happy to say this, and I don't mean to be boastful by saying this. I've had people tell me in my family and my friend circle, ask me, like, how do I make that change? How do I do this?
Wow.
And I'm only too happy to share my message and my resources, whatever I can. I do wish that we could incorporate these kind of practices early on in life, in schools, in colleges, even in workplaces, because honestly, if I had this sensibility when I was in Wall Street, I'd have been really great. I might have dealt with it. I'd have dealt with it just the way I should have dealt with it. I would not have, taken things so seriously and put the weight of the world on my shoulders. And, maybe I'd have stayed longer. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I just feel that and I feel like the change is happening. I feel like these are some of the life tools and life lessons that needs to be incorporated as part of any curriculum or any systematized situation.
And if you don't mind, I'd love to just take a left-hand turn here and go a little bit woo-woo. I did a medium reading a little while ago, and then I've had an Akashic record reading recently as well. And in both instances, my grandmother was there. And this is a little bit, for some people, it might be a little bit out there. Yeah. So when you said before, your grandmother, it would be, she would be very proud of you if she was here. She's no longer here. I would challenge to suggest that maybe she is aware of it based on my experiences and the stories I've had, which is really cool. But that's my little woo-woo moments. Have you had any fun, exciting, weird, wonderful woo-woo moments that you'd like to share?
Wait, Steph, before I answer that, can you tell me the two things that you did? What are they again?
Yeah, I booked to have a tarot reading. And
a tarot reading? Okay.
And the lady did a tarot plus a mediumship reading. So she gave me a lot more than just reading some cards and telling me, things about where I'm at the moment. She was, inviting people from the spiritual realm or wherever it is, the people around us, the different energies that we have. Is there anyone out there that has a little message for me, message of support, anything that I need to hear right now? And so anyway, one of those ladies, she just described the lady and I knew exactly who it was. It was my grandmother. And then in an Akashic record reading, which is a separate, totally different.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, right. Well, speak to Catherine after this if you want to know more.
I want to. My God, I want to. I'm really.
Yeah. So
interesting.
So Akashic record reading, a different modality, but it's a way that people can, I guess, Catherine, you can explain this better, but Catherine can look at what might be in store for us, what the future might hold for us, or what the universe maybe has, available to us, sort of thing. I think that's a terrible way of explaining it, Catherine, so I apologize. But in that, there is also the opportunity where there might be people, the different energies and spirits, whatever, that are there and they're supporting you on your journey and they're wanting to see you achieve something that you were destined to do. Catherine, please correct me on all of that.
Well, it wasn't too far from the truth. The Akash is sort of the space between, it's quantum. So we all have, there's records of everything, of your whole life, of past lives. The earth has records within it. Everything animate and inanimate has a record on it within the universal consciousness. So when you do
spell that for me.
AKA
in SH?
SHIC, Akashic.
I
yes.
see. Okay. Mhm.
So
Sorry,
when you
keep going.
connect, that's all right. When you connect in and you do an Akashic reading, you're actually connecting into that level of quantum consciousness. I think that's probably the easiest way of explaining it.
Interesting.
And then you can connect with the energy of all of your records. And then from there, you can actually look at everything that's happened to you in your past. You can get information about why it's happened, what the journey has been for you, things that you're struggling with in present. You can get sort of real-time feedback on. You can look at some future prospecting as well, which is really interesting. But within that, there's been a lot of instances like where you can ask for records on different people. You can even call in different energies and then get messages from that. So it's a really fascinating melting pot of deliciousness. And some of the information that comes through is can be so profound and so perspective changing. I'm finding it an infinite realm of fun play at the moment. It's amazing. It's amazing and incredible. But like it's the information on of everything is all available to us at any time, and we
It's
have
like
the
this
ability
master database.
That's exactly what it is. So yes, Steph has been playing in that realm a little bit with me. So we've been having some lovely readings, but it is fascinating when you call in energies of people that have passed, and the messaging that comes through can be not just inspiring, but also deeply comforting to know that you've got all of these amazing energies and souls around you that are really looking to help you achieve your highest and greatest good and to support you every step of the way. It's there you go. I think I probably talked.
But did you also say that there's future prospecting involved?
Look, you absolutely can do that. We are sovereign, so things in our future are never fixed, and there are infinite potentialities. So, for example, when I do a Akashic reading on myself, I normally get sort of 3 to 6 months worth of information, and then they're like, wait till that happens and then come back, because it's not in my highest and greatest good to know where I'm going to be in a year's time.
Exactly.
Because I'll start working on that now, and then I'll miss all of the steps that I needed to do to get to that organically. So, I always think that that's it can be a little bit of a messy place to play. And yet, for me, what's happening in the present? It's like, how can I be more aligned? Where are my blind spots? What is something that would be really interesting for me to look into now? Some of those kind of questions I feel are where it's most fruitful, because then it's sort of just opening your door and your mind to different potentialities and helping you kind of maybe realign slightly and step into things where you're a bit unsure, trying to get some of that kind of confirmation as to whether that's the right path for you can be really empowering.
I bet.
Yeah.
And I understand now what you mean by comforting. Guess what I'm looking up right after this?
Yes, I was not quite expecting to go into this in our session today, but it's like it is fascinating, and like stepping into some of this, what was typically seen as being quite woo-woo. Actually, the more I step in, the more totally normal it is. And actually, the more I feel like I'm fully supported by the universe and the earth, and like everything is there holding me and supporting me so lovingly. It's changed how I felt about life, love, like everything. So, we love talking about woo-woo stuff, because it really gives us the opportunity to open to what else is out there. What are other places we can play where we can kind of open our minds to being more connected with everything and everyone. That's a very beautiful space to be sitting in.
And you don't think of yourself as just being bounded by
exactly.
this, right? Like you're so much more connected with nature, with the energy flow, with the cosmos. And, some of us wait for proof of something like that, which is not a
Yes.
bad thing. Some of us intuitively accept some of these things, but at the end of the day, whatever works for you, right? But if you don't have an open mind, then you're shutting it away without even giving it a
Completely.
fair chance, which would be such a shame.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
And,
have you
and
found playing in this kind of meditation and breath work and yoga, have you had any kind of interesting experiences?
Yes, actually, a couple. I did a Vipassana sit for 10 days.
Wow.
It's the Buddhist meditation where this is what the Buddha practiced. And so the way you do it is you check into a Vipassana center and you put your phone away. And then for 10 days, you don't speak to anybody and you're literally just meditating for 10 days. So that was a very powerful thing. But I had a much more, uh, certainly less woo-woo maybe, but still quite a revealing moment personally that I want to share. And it's what I call the tale of two turkeys. Turkey's the bird.
Yes.
Yes. So you see, it's not quite so energy based. But when I lived in California, we had a place in the woods, and in our patio, we had this glass door. And so I was visited by these two turkeys, and I don't like turkeys. They're nasty and big and whatever. But they showed up every day, and I learned enough about them to know that, just watching and observing, that they were two males. So I called them Frick and Frack. They showed up enough that I could name them. So I
Yeah.
called them Frick and Frack, the brothers. And they would always come and they would primp themselves in front of my patio door. Um, on top of that, they would dirty my whole patio. So when they went away, then I had to go like clean it up and everything. So I was getting annoyed with them. But the reason is they would see their reflection on the glass and they would assume that there were other turkeys on the other side. And so these two brothers were, doing a mating dance, hoping to attract the females. So
Wow.
each time I would run and I try to chase them off to try to spare myself the trouble of cleaning the patio afterwards, but it didn't work. They would just come back. And so this drama went on for months, and I would be like, oh my God, the bird brains are back again, blah, 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 blah. I would curse them. One day, it suddenly struck me that no matter what I said or did, I could not convince them of the fact that this was not real. They were so married to their reality. They were living under an illusion that there were turkeys on the other side. The only turkey was me on the other side of the glass, but they didn't know that. They saw the reflection, and I could not get them off that bandwagon that there were no turkeys. They were so convinced of their reality and the illusion they were living under. And it was a moment for me to ask myself the same question.
Yes.
What illusion am I living under? And suddenly, for a moment, I remember because I was washing dishes, and I just dropped the dish and I looked around. For that one moment, I had no idea if what I was looking at was real or not. And I have to tell you, that was a profound experience for me. And suffice to say, I made friends with my turkeys for having opened my mind. So I didn't chase them away anymore. I just let them live their reality. But I have never stopped questioning what is life, what is my reality? Like, how have I decided that this is real for me? And we know from science that, for example, the color red or green is not real. A leaf is not really green. It's our brain that, with the waves, the light waves that come in, our brains put it together and say that's a green leaf. The leaf itself is not green, right? So, I mean, I have now, you cannot unsee this. You cannot
That's right.
unask this question. And now this is a question I live with.
It's seeing beyond the veil, isn't it? We
Yes.
talk about that in yoga, that it's, the Maya, the illusion of what we think is real or what we think is our reality. Yeah. It's when you can start stepping back and getting that different perspective, it's almost like rising above it to look back in. Everything changes. It's like dominoes. It just shifts everything.
Exactly. And I think it's a shame not to ask the question, I think I was one of those who was pretty convinced of my reality until I wasn't. And I can never unask that question. And I feel that once the question is there, you're now just seeking the answers, or really just trying to make peace with the question some days.
Mm.
Is that the reference to the green leaf? Is that from the speech? Because I've heard it before, and in this speech that I've heard, he references, that there's 5 colors and there's 5 sounds, and that I'm familiar with it, but I just wasn't sure if that's from a known speech. Are you aware of it, or have you heard of it before? That reference to the green leaf?
Not the one you're referring to, where
Okay.
so I've been on this path of consciousness. What is consciousness? I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of listening, to the luminaries out there, to the experts
Yeah.
on consciousness. And in one of the talks I heard was this thing about, is consciousness one of the fundamental truths of
Yeah.
this world, right? And it goes on about how our brains actually construct the stories of what's happening
Mhm.
around us. And so neuroscientists are doing more and more experiments to, what we started on this conversation as a woo-woo experience or a question.
Yeah.
It's far quickly going from the realm of woo-woo to the realm of science,
Yeah.
and especially neuroscience, where they're doing experiments to show us how we presume things, because the brain needs to tell us the story, because that's how we learn to evolve, right? From the tigers and the woolly mammoths, we escaped because our brains were able to fabricate the story. The problem is there are no woolly mammoths anymore. We're still fabricating stories. And so that's where the color reference came in about, for example, there is no color. It's just our brains putting together the different wavelengths and making something green. So I don't know about this 5 one. I don't think it's the same.
I'll
same
send
one.
it to you. I'll send it to you just
Please.
so that you can listen to it for yourself. But Dr. Joe Dispenza does share a lot about his research and his studies that he does on how the impact of meditation and breath work and how much it helps us. So I couldn't agree more. There's a lot more science going into this to remove the mystic part of this woo-woo conversation and be like, hey, that we are more than what we think we are. Like, let's actually have a look at it. So it's quite exciting.
And isn't it fascinating that 5,000 years ago, the ancient yogis had the same knowledge, and the Buddhists had the same knowledge and everything, and now we're really just slapping a different lens on it and coming at it from science, which is great, but we must give credit where it's due, where this has been observed and practiced and realized for many thousands of years before this.
It's almost a moment for us where we're remembering. It's a remembering that we're going through at the moment instead of coming up with something new.
That's right.
And just, I think the fact that we've got the science now to back it up helps us to be open enough to remember and to really look inside and say, actually, you know what, that actually feels very real to me. It actually doesn't feel so out there and impossible. It's actually, it's coming from inside of me. So it's such an interesting way of how that's helping us shift, because if the science keeps backing it and keeps opening and saying, well, actually, this is how quantum mechanics works. And yes, you can do energy healing. That's a thing. And they're starting to actually say yes to all these things. It's allowing people to actually sit with that now and get out of their minds and back in their hearts and say, how does that feel to me? And then that place of feeling is then a place of knowing and saying, actually, you know what, it's a yes. It's like a full body yes then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And your presence is saying yes.
That's right.
Now, not just your mind, your full presence is saying yes. There's a great book by this author called Sebastian Junger. It's called In My Time of Dying. And it's a fascinating book. And he actually explores it from a quantum mechanics point of view. So he's talking Heisenberg's uncertainty principles, Schrodinger's cat, all of those things, plus his experience more from a mystical, spiritual side. And it's a fascinating book. I highly recommend it.
Amazing.
One of your favorites?
Yes, I have. I read a lot. So it's definitely one of my favorites. I have others too, but that one, absolutely. It blew my
Any
mind.
other recommendations? Because we love hearing recommendations personally for our own listening, but for our audience, is there anything else that you found really helpful to, help you along your journey, something that you revert back to at any time?
Yes. I would recommend, especially since we talked about breath work and pranayama, this book by James Nestor called Breath is a
Yes.
fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
You've already read it? Okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
That I really love that book. Let's see. There's another great one by this Harvard brain researcher called, her name is Jill Bolte Taylor. It's called My Stroke of Insight.
Okay.
And so what happens to her, she's a brain researcher, and she has a stroke. And she knows that she's having a stroke because that's what she does. She
Yeah.
studies brains and how it functions and everything. So she has a stroke. And what ends up happening is her left hemisphere is shut down because of the stroke. And now with just her right hemisphere working, she has all the experiences that an enlightened Buddhist would have, right? Like all this about we're all the same. There's no, this illusion of separateness. We're all just energy. She looks at her mother. She's in hospital. Her mother comes and she's like, I can see a general form, but there's no difference between me and my mom. She feels universal love, compassion, this whole thing. Of course,
Beautiful.
of course, her function returns. Her left hemisphere function eventually returns, and she writes. Of course, she's writing the book afterwards, right? So she remembers all this, but she writes that I can feel my left hemisphere coming back online, and she almost wishes it wouldn't because she
Wow.
has this amazing experience. And I have to say, the consistency of what she says she experienced versus what the Buddha is supposed to have experienced versus Thich Nhat Hanh or someone on
Yes.
psychedelics, the consistency has me convinced
Yes.
that this illusion of separateness is just an illusion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I would definitely recommend that.
Thank you.
And for anyone who's trying to meditate, and I have this in my notes for my meditation course, I would say John Kabat-Zinn's Full Catastrophe Living
Yes.
is a very nice book. Very
It's
nice.
beautiful.
I mean, it made a huge difference to me to becoming more mindful. And you don't necessarily have to meditate to be mindful. So this is a great book.
Thank you for all those shares. That's sensational. It's so nice
Of
to
course.
be able to play in some of these rabbit holes. They can open up such new levels of awareness and just help you tap in to yourself so much more. So that's really fascinating.
And that's the great thing about this, isn't it? That I feel like we have this lab, like you don't have to go anywhere. You just have to go inside. And we are carrying this amazing mystery in us. And so it's just there for us to unravel it and to let it expose, not even unravel it. I would say for us to just be still enough for it to expose itself because it's there. And so that in some way is a boon and a bane, right? Like it's, I want someone to show it to me right now. But no, you have to do the work and you have to find it inside of yourself.
Absolutely. Nothing in life comes easy. Nothing at all.
No.
Yeah. And I think one of the little insights or something that came up for me while we were having our conversation is I realized a lot of people are probably already experiencing something close to being in a meditative state or an in-flow state. I was thinking about the people in the corporate world who are sitting at their computer and they're just like totally zoned out and they're in their moment and they're focused and they're doing something. And then it can be the same for, someone who's at home cooking and they're just in that moment and that's all that there is, and they're listening to a little bit of music and they're loving life and it's that little piece of bliss that they're experiencing. And same with sports. I was thinking about for myself at times, and this is where it came up, at times I'm out there training, doing my thing, and I'm really distracted and I'm not there. But then I notice the times when I am completely plugged in. And I think that's my own little analogy for, maybe that's what I need to think about when I'm practicing my meditation. I'm not always going to have it perfect, but I have been plugging in at times. I have been doing an activity or something that's allowed me to just be there and enjoy it, and just thinking about the breath and just being present for that moment. And it's probably something similar. Teachers or suggested, yeah, I've got this. I can definitely do this meditation.
Absolutely. And, that's where what you're describing is where the subject and object boundaries blur, where the person, is not doing the thing, but there's no distinction between you and the thing, right? Like you're so in that flow state that you forget who you are even for a moment. And that is absolutely meditation. And as you said, we've all been there, even, when I was in corporate, so involved in my, presentation or spreadsheet or the talk I was doing or whatever it is. I absolutely. And in fact, if I could go back and tell myself when I was working in corporate America to remember that you are valuable, not because of what you do, you are valuable because of who you are. And I think often what ends up happening is we put pressure on ourselves with mixing up our identities of who we are with what we do. And sometimes you have to, there is no choice, but you always have the ability to take a step back and say, nowadays, that's how I define success also, is to say that I am valuable for who I am, not only because of what I do.
Beautiful.
So if during the times that that you're not happy with yourself, working a job, or you have so many reasons for doing what you do there, but to disconnect that identity from your work is really helpful. I wish I'd known it back then.
Yeah. Well, Sue, we've had you online for over an hour now, and I feel like we've got to invite you back for another session, because I think we could really dive into even more that we haven't even really scratched the surface on. Is there anything before we wrap up that you would like to share with the audience and the listeners? Anything that might be a little bit of a tip or a wellness tip that they could take away and apply to their life?
Well, first of all, I didn't realize it's already been an hour. Talk about being in a flow state. Here we are. I've had so much fun. Thank you, both of you. The only thing I would like to say, actually, this quote came to me when all I was left with were questions and I had no answers at all. And it goes this way. It says, "It is often when you yearn for an answer that you stand to gain the most by staying with the question." And this came to me when I was asking so many questions of myself as to who I was, what I wanted to do, what's my purpose, what's my calling, all of those things. And I had zero answers. I had no idea. So sometimes staying with the question without any answers can be very uncomfortable. But the only thing I would like to say to everyone out there who may be considering a career change or just unhappy with what you're doing, try to get comfortable with that discomfort, because that discomfort was the catalyst for me in changing what I did. I didn't know it at that time, but that unhappiness, that discomfort is a sign for change, and it will come. So for now, stay with the questions and try to get comfortable with that discomfort. That's all I have to say.
I love that, Sue. That's such a beautiful way to wrap things up. And
thank you.
And you're right. That's exactly where the growth is in that discomfort, and really looking at it more interestingly, like, what is it telling me? What is it whispering to me? It's fascinating, that concept, and so much power in it. You're absolutely right.
Yes. And our initial instinct is to get away from it. Is to A, deny it, or B, just avoid it, or C, just change it. But I think, and it's hard to do, ask me, I know all about that, but to stay with it and to sit with it and try to figure out what it's teaching you, I think is invaluable. And, it took me a while to get there, but, and if I can do it, anyone can do it, to be honest.
Absolutely. We've all got it within us to make change and follow what we should be doing.
For sure.
Well, Sue, again, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation and cannot wait to get you back on for another one.
Thank you both. I've had such a good time. I've barely felt the time go by. Happy to talk anytime. As you can tell, I talk a lot.
It was amazing. Thank you for all your shares. It was so appreciated. We're very, very grateful for your time.